These powerful words, originally shared by Patrick Cozier, stay with me because I never walk into any room alone. I walk with the voices and the strength of those who came before me. I carry the sacrifice and spirit of two remarkable women, my mother and my Auntie Vi, both part of the Windrush generation who came to Britain from Jamaica in the 1950s. My mom became an auxiliary nurse, caring, cleaning, lifting, holding. My Auntie Vi trained as a state-enrolled nurse, SEN, and dreamed of becoming a state-registered nurse, an SRN. But that door was closed to her, like it was for so many others. At the time, Enoch Powell, the Minister of Health, actively recruited workers from the Caribbean to build the NHS. But while the invitation may have sounded welcoming, the system they entered was far from fair. Nurses like my aunt were allowed only limited roles, their progression blocked by policies shaped by the very same man who later stood up and gave the infamous Rivers of Blood speech. It was just one of the many ways racism showed itself, not new but deeply rooted. Both my mom and Auntie Vi experienced overt racism in their NHS roles, including patients who refused to be touched by them because they were black. They were made to feel unwelcome in the very institution they came to serve, but they didn't walk away. They stood their ground again and again with grace and with grit. They stayed, they worked, they gave. They raised children in a country that often treated them as outsiders. They survived a system not built for them, and still they held it up, quietly, powerfully, every single day. My mother passed away in November 2023 at the age of 94. Auntie Vi is still with us at 92, a living testament to courage, resilience, and quiet strength. As we mark Windrush Day, we must remember not only the arrival, but the reality. The scandal, the erasure, the injustice, and still the legacy. The Windrush generation built this country in more ways than we're ever taught. And I will never stop honouring them. To those of us who are their children, and I know many of you are, we carry not just their legacy, but their lessons. Their strength lives on in us. So yes, I walk into rooms with pride because I know exactly who sent me.
So, growing up in Jamaica, what is unique about, obviously you've got country and town here, which is already unique.
Yes.
But when you think back to your childhood, June and we're together, I mean, what is unique?
It was unique. It was freedom.
Yeah. And
your windows could be left open at night. You could sleep with your windows open. It was very free. We knew all the neighbors knew us. So like my mother she was on her own, so she had to work. So of course, more or less the neighbors look after us when we're not, because they knew us. So that's how it was in Kingston.
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom. And like my brother was close to me, he was 2 years older than me. So I was like a little boy as well. I used to climb trees, kill birds, things like that.
No, say more.
Say more. Anything he did, I used to just follow him.
So you were a bit of a tomboy?
Yes. I used to follow him in the trees all the time, climbing, picking genneps, mangoes. Oh. And of course in Jamaica, that during that time, it wasn't as well developed as it is now. So there used to be a lot of open land where you could go and get mangoes, fruits and everything is free.
I was born in Guyana.
Yeah.
I grew up in Guyana until I was 15 years of age, 15 and a half, roughly. My mom, previously to that, in 1957, 59, my mom and my father, who was separated, because she had 4 from my father.
Yeah.
She met my stepfather, and they decided to make life. He came during the Windrush, the heart of the Windrush, to England. And then he sent for my mom. My mom, at the age, I was 15, she left when I was 9. At the age of 15, my mom sent for myself, my sister, who's a year after me, and my last brother for my stepfather. So she sent for 3 children to come to London.
And that's when you were
I was
fif-
going on 15.
15?
Yeah.
Well, we were brought up in a Christian environment, so we went to church every Sunday, things like this. So it was very strict. We couldn't stay out at night. We couldn't do things like that. Well, I mean, my mom was very, very strict with us.
If we're
So-
out at night, we're out with them.
Yeah, we didn't go out in the evenings. Boys were no for the girls. You know, things that are very, very strict.
Yeah.
For, you know, because of the church.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Takes a village to grow a person, to mold a person. You couldn't do anything wrong because there was somebody who knew your parents that would tell them, I saw your daughter and she wasn't doing something right or whatever. And by the time you get home, your parents know. Right? You couldn't pass somebody without saying good morning or howdy. That was an insult. You had to respect your elders. They care about you. So we grew up in this caring family where we look out for one another. If my grandmother was a good baker, she would bake and she would send to this buddy who had a lot of children, and she would share. When they're doing anything festival, they come together as a group, and they will have banquets and whatever, and everything was on the table, and everybody sharing whatever they had. So it was one big happy family.
My mum grew up in Jamaica. She was from a place called Manchester, Collierville, which is in the countryside. I've been there. It is very, very rural. That's where she was born. Let me correct myself. That's where she was born, but she was actually brought up in Kingston. She left Manchester, Collierville to go to Kingston. And one of the reasons I think why she left Manchester was to probably have a better life in terms of jobs and education. That's why she grew up in Kingston. The same, along with my Auntie Vi as well, her sister.
Home, you had your chores. And once you do your chores, you better get that book. Have you picked up your book since morning? So you had to do your chores. Like, we weren't fortunate to have running water at the time because so we had to go to rivers and things because like the parish where Usain Bolt came from, you know, they had running water before places in Britain. Yeah, so we had to do our chores, certain housework and things like that. Even before we go to school as well, we had to be up early, do our chores. If to do some work in the garden, well, we call it yard. So you have to sweep up the rubbish, the leaves and things. My sister had to inside the house to clean the floor and what have you. Then we would first go to the river to get the water and fill up these barrels, and then we come back, do our chores, get ourselves ready and off to school.
In your culture, how do you wear your cloth? Yeah? You might wrap it around you, you might put it around your neck. Yeah? You might fold it through your hands. Yeah? Good. Shake it off, shake it off. Good, lovely. Shaking that scarf. Good. Tracing the body, tracing our steps around the world, wherever we come from, yeah? So using the cloth as a symbol of that, yeah? So we can use the cloth and we can take it around the body, up the arm, across the shoulders, around the neck. So tracing the body with our material, okay? And it's almost like an ode to where we're from, yeah? Feeling the material across our body, feeling where we've come from, yeah? And being proud of that, okay? We're holding our culture, our love for our culture in the palm of our hands. Lovely, give it a good squeeze, hiding it like magic, and then revealing it again. Good, nice.
School was brilliant. It was, we were mainly taught by English teachers. So we grew up knowing lots of English people. The school I went to was a Church of England school like you. And mainly we were taught British history. We knew a lot about the kings and the queens and things like that. We didn't know anything about Jamaica. We knew about the kings, the queens.
So you're here to talk about your life with Noel. What is the reason for him thinking about coming to the UK?
Well, he always said he was invited by the Queen and he wanted to come and make a better life for himself. So, which is what he did.
When?
He came over here in 1960. So, at that time, when they came to England, they didn't go on the dole or anything like that. He landed one day and had to go and find a job the next day because they got no help.
Tell me all about it.
What?
When you came, where did you live first?
Lal and her husband.
Oh, Lal and her husband.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And then, did they have anyone living with them? Or just you?
Mm-mm. The rooms were big.
The rooms were big.
Mm-hmm.
Were you all in one room?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, where was the house?
In Paddington.
In Paddington. I see. And then, where did you go? When do you remember the boat that you came on?
Mm-hmm.
No? Did you come by boat or plane?
Boat.
By boat.
That's a long journey.
It was a. Did it take a long time?
No.
Was the boat nice?
Well, he had the boat for on the side the boat for. You just go in from there to there.
You just going from there to there. How the boat was, what didn't matter.
They lived in a very small house. There was 15 of them. My mum came to this country in 1961. She was 17 years old. So what happened was, her sister that I'm talking about, Florida, she came in the 50s and married Gus Hilton. And Gus Hilton they both sent for Rubina Dyer, who was the next in line. And then the next sister was Renita Dyer, but she got pregnant, so she wasn't able to come. So my mum straight said to my granddad, if you don't send me to England, I'm going to get pregnant for one of the guys here. So then my granddad then sold his land, because she had to kind of wait, and he kind of literally just sold the land straight away and sent her here. And she came here on BOAC. Yeah, she flew here.
They worked on the land, they were farmers. I think that's one of the reasons why my mother chose Sheffield rather than London, because it reminded her, because Sheffield's a city, but it also has the countryside as well. It has the Peak District, which is easy to get to from Sheffield. And she worked on the land, she worked with animals, but as a little girl, and I know that's one of the reasons why she chose Sheffield rather than London, because my aunt chose London to settle, whereas my mum chose Sheffield.
Because she wanted some countryside.
She wanted some countryside, and she thought it was a better place for children to grow up as well.
And she was a matriarch of the family, like she was the glue. She kept everybody together. Being the fifth one of the family, she was very strong. Because even growing up as a child, my granddad was a farmer, so he had animals, pigs, cows, all kind of things. So my mum was the one that was chosen to get up in the mornings and go and milk the cow and bring the milk. And those times they had no shoes. It's only maybe weekends, so they'd walk bare feet, how many miles, to go on, to go on the pasture to do what she had to do, and then in turn come back and then get ready to go to school. So hence why, unfortunately for my mum, she didn't get as much education as she would have liked to. But my grandfather was a man with a lot of common sense, and he was a businessman.
Well, since I was a child, I wanted to be a nurse. Always wanted to be a nurse. I saw this midwife riding her cycle. I must have been 4 or 5. And I saw her riding the cycle, and they said, oh, she's delivering a baby. And that's what I wanted to be. And growing up all those years, I wanted to be a midwife.
Because of that one?
Because of that one lady riding the cycle. So, of course, my brother came to England before me. And of course, I told you we were close, so he's left me now, so I wanted to come as well. Mm-hmm. And then we heard this story on the radio, because we didn't have television. And they were asking for nurses, and I wanted to be a nurse. And I was about 18, 19. And then I wrote to my dad and asked him for the fare, because of course we didn't have the money. So he used to look after us. I went to private school. He used to pay for us and everything. And I asked him for the money. I wanted to join my brother. And when my brother came here, he had to go in the army because it was compulsory then. So he was in the army, so I had to go and stay with my aunt. So I wanted to come to England to do nursing. And when I heard that, they wanted nurses in England.
This is the NHS you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I decided I want to come and do nursing here. And of course, we knew so much about England, and it was the mother country, and they would welcome us and everything else.
Verita, your reason for coming?
It was more or less the same, but I wanted to be a teacher because I was older than June, and she had done her, was it senior Cambridge you did? I did. And the curriculum, was set from here. So we were following the curriculum. And I did the 3rd year exam. It's an exam that for 3 separate years, you do certain subjects like the first year. And this was after school, 2 hours after school, your parents paid for extra tuition because I wasn't fortunate enough to go to a private school, right? And when the government gives scholarships, they might give scholarships, say, for argument's sake, Cornwall College, I would say Montego Bay High School was a girls' school. And they would give, and that was private, and they would give scholarships, say, for 10 girls. But guess what? Maybe 100 girls apply.
Rudolph, where are you from?
Jamaica.
You're from
St. Elizabeth.
St. Elizabeth. And
one thing I want to tell you before we get any further.
Yeah.
I've been here so long that I don't remember half of the places out there.
It's okay.
He said to me, he came here when he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
And when he came, he came to his uncle that paid for him to come here. And he was living with them until he was working and trying to pay back the money that they spent for him.
For the journey.
Yes.
Okay.
And he was working, so figure more than less. I don't know much about that, but just saying what he said tell me. He find his lady, married, 3 kids, grew up now, he has grandchildren, great-grand. And yeah, that's, and he said the work that he done was bricklayer.
Bricklaying, building work.
Yeah, building work.
I got the opportunity to come to England. I came up to some relatives in Tooting Bec. And don't laugh, but when I came to Heathrow, dressed up in my nice dress, my gloves and everything, and we got a bus from Heathrow to Victoria, a coach, and then the underground to Tootingbeck. And when I came out, walking along Tootingbeck Road, I said to my relative, what a lot of factories on the road. Because I saw this chimney, because that's what you see in the films and things. Factory is one of them you're going to live in.
I think my mum came over either in the late
maybe 50s?
Yeah, late 50s, 60s, something like that, because I was born in 57. So late 50s, early 60s, you know what I mean? She came over, she came out as Wandering Rush.
Okay.
And she came to work in a health industry, in a nursing industry, you see. So she's been, she hasn't been she's qualified but not qualified. She just became a auxiliary nurse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so she works as hard as she can, you know, find it hard to get places to stay.
And then you came to London?
Yes, I came to
you
London.
At this stage, you haven't trained to be a nurse? Or
No.
So
I came to London.
Yeah.
And then I started applying for jobs to be trained as a nurse. And most of the places wouldn't accept my qualifications. So we thought, well, you know, we had junior Cambridge and senior Cambridge, so it was marked here in England, and they wouldn't accept it.
Even though that had been
Even
set
though, yeah, they
by
knew,
England.
because by then they had
And
O
that's the whole
levels,
education
O levels.
system.
Yes,
the
the whole
whole
education
education
system
system.
from O levels to A levels. They were marked here because we had to wait for it to be marked here, and then they returned the results to us, and they wouldn't accept it. So I used to do odd jobs like I used to like sewing, so I did a bit of sewing and so forth. I applied to various places. I presume you saw the one where I went to, where I applied, because my name was Brooks. And when I applied, because I didn't have because it was Brooks, they knew the name Brooks. So I got the interview, went for the interview, and the lady looked at me and she put me to sit down, and I'm still sitting. She didn't come back. She didn't say anything. And the store was closing, and so I just left.
And how long were you sitting?
Maybe 2 or 3 hours, because I thought she's going to come. Or maybe she was waiting until no, but she didn't come back to me. She just avoided me the whole time. And then I also went to work in it wasn't a factory, but it was a place where they were doing sewing. And when they saw who I was, couldn't get the job. So of course I decided not to work again. I tried again to apply to schools of nursing, and of course at that time I didn't know they had a 2-tier system where you had the SCN and the SRN at the time, and so I applied, and of course you got in to do the SCN, didn't you? They put us all to do the SCN at the time. So I did SCN first.
Where was that?
Just at Wilson Hospital. You remember Wilson Hospital? So while I was there, the tutor, she said to me, "You're not SCN material," so she sent me straight over to St. Helier. And so I was trained in St. Helier.
You have to act even more with your faces as you look into on a new land.
So Anya's point about waiting a few minutes till the first few,
like 3 or 4 lines of a poem.
3 or
so
4 lines.
As an audience, I'd be listening to what it was about, and then you would start.
and then we
to
make our
understand
entries. So
who you
slow
were.
down the process of going through
Yes,
into the space.
Have strengthened the bonds through the generations of passed down stories. A history of resistance in a time of enslavement, the reality to you shrouded in secrecy unspoken. You have a duty was the mantra, as you've been called by the Empire that presided over your far-off lands and sunny skies, crystal blue waters where flying fish preside.
Make sure you're holding it, everyone. So you pass it on around. Pass it on around from one side to the other side. It's mine. It's mine. Whose suitcase is that? Nice. Yes. Turn around. You can turn around. It's mine. But don't go away. Don't take it away. Just keep it. Yes. Keep playing with it. Yes. How are you doing with that?
Oh, actually, it was mine all along. I know it was mine.
Yes, that's it. I like that. Yes, it's mine.
That's mine.
Yeah, I love that. Yes.
When she sent for me in the 70s, it was just sort of like different. Because I arrived in June over here in the 70s, you know. And as soon as they opened the plane door, I could feel the cold. So I asked them to do something. I find the cold very hard to do, or so did she.
Nights I cried to go home. Oh, yes. There are many nights when you wanted to go back home. Especially, we came up in 1962. It was very cold. There was smog. There was fog.
You didn't have
there was
radiators.
ice.
It was the paraffin heaters.
So from that point of view, it was terrible. We had chilblains. We had everything. We experienced something we've never had before in our lives. And this was why we wanted to go home. Not the racism so much. It was mainly the weather, I think.
Yeah.
I think the weather was worse than the racism to us.
And I know that my mom and Auntie Vi contacted Jamaica to say that it's not good here, I want to come back. And I know that Charlotte, my grandmother, said, you have to stay. You've taken the journey, you spent all this money, it's taken you a long time to get here. You need to grin and bear it now, basically. And she did, and they told her about the racism and the refusal of housing, but Charlotte said you have to. I think that's one of the things why they're both resilient women. Both my mum was resilient quietly, and my Auntie Vi. So my mum was an auxiliary nurse in the NHS, and she worked as an auxiliary nurse for about 40 years. Auntie Vi, similar, but she was an SEN nurse, and she wanted to take her SRN exams, the State Registered Nurse, in case people don't know what that is. And they were blocked, a lot of the black nurses, including my aunt.
Tell me about this, because there's obviously, when you're saying, you know, he said he was invited by the Queen, he must have had expectations of what he thought London, or that he came to London, the East End of London. Did he share that with you? What did he think it was going to be like?
I think he was quite shocked at the way he was treated, the way people spat at him and threw water and things over his head when he used to go looking for somewhere to live. They'd open the window and throw water over his head, and it's really, you know, you can't believe it unless you're really in that situation that they can treat another human being like that.
How did you meet? June? You can give
So
your version of the story.
So when we were at Wilson Hospital, she came there. I was there before her. And then she came to Wilson Hospital, funnily enough.
And where did
That's
you
how
meet?
we met.
Where did
On
you
the
meet?
ward.
On the ward?
On the ward. We started talking. And, you know, she's from Jamaica, I'm from Jamaica, so we started exchanging stories, you know, and that was it.
And I remember sometime when I'm on nights, by then I was married and I had a child, and she would come and take Sandra.
I would babysit.
All
I
day
would go
out,
babysit,
in
'cause I
order for
was-
me to have a good night, a good day sleep, and then she bring her back or what have you, you know.
Because I used to, I wasn't married then. No, I used to live in the nursing home. I used to live in the nursing home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is a friendship.
Yeah,
Gosh.
until this day.
Wow. That is a how many years in nursing for you then?
Oh, God. I counted. I thought it was nearly 50.
God. Wow.
I retired at 70.
Tell me why.
She liked it that much. Well, I did general nursing.
Yeah.
Then I went on to do my midwifery. I did do the midwifery.
You came when you were 17. Am I allowed to ask your age or not? How many?
Well, that's what I would try to say to you. I can't remember things, but my good little wife,
yeah, she knows some
close
of
that part for
September is 83.
Okay. Right, I'm doing the math. Yeah. So that's 27, 27, 47, 57, 67, 77. So you've been here 66 years. You came here 66 years ago in 1959.
Nobody tell me that I'll call you a liar.
I think that's right. So it's a very different world then. I mean, gosh, that's a different world that you came from. And do you feel that? Does it feel very much now that London, that the UK is your home?
That's my home.
Yeah.
That is my home.
Yeah.
Because I've been here all them years. Where am I going to go? England I am, Jamaica or something, and that's it.
I ride a bicycle too. Because in those days, when you were training, if you didn't have a car, you had to get there by some means. I had to learn to ride. Bless his soul, he used to teach me to ride. He used to walk behind the bicycle. And we used to, at night when we were training, we had to go to deliver. In those days, they used to have home deliveries. So he used to go with me. He used to go with me, and stayed outside and wait until the patient delivered and then come back. That time I was married by then. So, yes, I did eventually become a midwife on bicycle.
Let's have a look how we can interact with the people who are on the chairs. So I don't know if this is possible to hold somehow. 10. So you will have to come a lot faster. No, okay. Something to okay. I don't know if you can reach.
Yes, you can just So we sway. Left, right, left.
Right. How many times are we swaying back and forwards? Do you know? Did you count it?
Okay, you can rock right.
Windrush poem. You have left your homeland with a heavy heart as you climb the steps to board the ship that will carry you over darker waters, your waves to disappear in the mists far gone. Clutch tight against your chest the gifts of memories you hold with pride to follow the call of a promised dream. Weep do you not for the beauty of your fair isle, to a place where darker skies prevail, where on green pastures rain will steal the day's light, where your sunshine is rarer and smiles on faces you will not encounter, for your difference will be measured in a test against your endurance. Although your dress code will be familiar, you will hold on to the tears that separate you from your kindred spirits, rich in silk of colour, music that keeps your heart a beat, rhythms roll onto your feet, to your scorched earth beneath the soles of your feet. The aromas of the familiar food that fills you with joy and familiarity have strengthened the bonds through the generations of passed down stories. A history of resistance in a time of enslavement, the reality to you shrouded in secrecy, unspoken. You have a duty, was the mantra, as you've been called by the empire that's presided over your far-off lands and sunny skies, crystal clear waters where flying fish preside amongst the riches of life. A call, they say, by your motherland, choosing to ignore, earth mothers wore their crowns, where the strength of your fathers, warriors of endurance and enigmatic resilience, once stood valiantly in their moments to defend their battle cry. There will never be another, for she was gifted her sons and daughters in the promised land on white sand. So carry your hope with pride in defence of your kings and queens. Upright and stoic, blaze your trail like diamonds in the mine. Gather your flowers in bloom you have left behind, for the day of arrival their perfume will carry the sunshine and light, crystal blue waters, together as you once stood in the memories and stories that brought your people strength. The island of a diamond will be once more in the creation of new stories to be told forevermore, in the poets and the storytellers, creators of dance and song.
Now you're an East End girl
Mm.
from Forest Gate.
Mm.
How did you meet this fantastic fella? How did that happen?
His friend lived next door to us, and the friend was a mechanic, so he used to repair Noel's car, or, well, apart from Noel going to visit, and he arranged a dance one weekend. Although I'd spoken to Noel when he used to go to the friend, it was only hello, but at the dance we got to know each other more, and it went on from there. But of course it wasn't something that I could say, Mum and Dad, here's my boyfriend. So it was all hidden and nobody knew, as I thought. So I suppose, oh my God, 6-7 months. Everything was in a secret. I'd have to meet him somewhere. And then in his car, when we went past certain turn-ins where I thought my parents or my family might be around, I used to have to duck down in the car, and all very secret service type of thing. But then, unbeknown to me, a nosy neighbour had seen me in Noel's car. So my dad said that somebody had told him that I'd been seen with a black man. So then I got a lecture. If I got involved, my children wouldn't be one thing or the other. And really, you know, wasn't agreeing with it, because I was the only girl out of 4 of us. I've got 3 older brothers. So I suppose he was extra protective. But then as time went on and he did meet Noel, completely different, because he met the person, not judging him for being coloured or black, I should say. And, you know, he was a human being.
You tell me where you want to start. Do you want to tell me about your mum and dad and where they come from, their backgrounds? Where do you want to begin with them?
I don't know, because it's a long story. But anyway.
Where were they from?
So, my mum was half Scottish, half Italian, and my dad was Jamaican. My mum was in care intermittently in her life, and she was like a Magdalena child, really. And anyway, so she met my dad in Scotland at a dance, and my dad was 9 years older than my mum. My mum was 16 at the time. So it didn't really go down very well, not with his family, not with her family in inverted commas. And my mum said at her wedding, like, you'll see a beautiful photo of my mum and dad, but she said she's never seen so many people cry at her wedding because she was marrying an immigrant and they were worried about what the future would be. And for me, I feel like I was raised by children, because my dad was 21 when he arrived here, and his family were probably totally invested in his life. He was one of 10, and his price of his ticket was £80, which was a quite substantial sum in those days, 1956. So he could have bought land in Jamaica. So you just think all those hopes and dreams, and they come to this country. And then growing up, my dad was a very funny man. You know, we wouldn't say he was a life and soul, but he would come out with one-liners. Like, I can remember I went out with a doctor's son, and I brought this boyfriend to the house, and my dad, I saw them talking, and then my dad said, look, you're not applying for a job, I don't need a CV. So he could be really funny. But he was very outspoken within the family. But for me, I felt like he was the most unwelcome guest, really, wherever he went. Like, even for my mum and dad, there was a dinner at his firm that he worked for, which was unionised. and because they were a mixed couple, they weren't allowed to go together. So we kind of lived alongside brutal racism, but you lived alongside it. I can remember going to the Walworth Road, to the market, and the National Front newspaper being handed out, and you just walk past.
You know what, I didn't realise what they were saying, you know, until someone pulled me aside to me and says, they're not being friendly, they're being insulted, they're racist and all this stuff. I didn't know what racist was until I went to school in England, you know. And, you know, they used to call me all these names on the slot, right? And some guy turned around and says, oh, you wog, you know. You can't use these days, but I'm saying it, I don't care. Oh, you wog. And I went, hang on. I was thinking about it. I do the initials, W-O-G, yeah? And I says, what? I went, so he said it to me and I went, thank you. And he says, what? I says, you just call me a wog. He went, yeah. I says, do you know what it means? He went, no. I says, don't use words that don't mean. I says, I'll tell you what I mean. Western Oriental gentleman. He went, you know, you don't need to have, with racism, you don't need to have fights or nothing like that. You use that. You use reverse psychology on people.
Do you mind me asking you a question? You said you didn't do well there, but your own experience of racism, was it everything? Was it subtle and unsubtle? Was it, you know, physical?
It wasn't subtle. It was there was name calling, racist name calling. I was beaten up by the National Front when I was a teenager. These are young men. And my mum, and this is on my way home back from that school that she sent me to. She still didn't take me out. She was always going up there complaining to them and fighting for my corner, but she would not take me out. The same way that my grandmother wouldn't say, go, she made me stay there. The same way my grandmother said, you've got to stay in the UK. I don't know. And then in the end, I said, I can't do this anymore. 5 years I had to endure that. And that's when I went to the other school.
Arrivals at Tilbury. The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans. Many are ex-servicemen who know England. They served this country well. In Jamaica, they couldn't find work. Discouraged but full of hope, they sailed for Britain. Citizens of the British Empire coming to the mother country with good intent, good intent, good intent, good intent, good intent, good intent.
I'm looking for somewhere to stay, and then I see horrible words on the door. You remember that, don't you? They don't want us to.
They asked us to come. Down the way where the nights are gay and the sun shines daily on the mountain top, I took a trip on a sailing ship, and when I reached Jamaica, I made a stop. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. Sounds of laughter everywhere, and the dancing girls swing to and fro. I must declare my heart is there, though I've been from Maine to Mexico. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. Down at the market you can hear ladies cry out while on their heads they bear. Ackee rice, salt fish are nice, and the rum is fine any time of year. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. Down the way where the nights are gay and the sun shines daily on the mountain top, I took a trip on a sailing ship, and when I reached Jamaica I made a stop. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. Sad to say I'm on my way, won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town.
Going to church physically was really important because there was people there from the same place from the same place in Jamaica where she was brought up in Kingston. So that was really important, and seeing people there. It was going to church. It starts off with her faith, and that was the biggest thing. But for me, if I'm talking about me, it was more like a fashion parade. And that's what Windrush was like as well. You've seen the photographs when they come and go over. But for me, for my mum, faith was the number one for her. If she didn't have that, I felt like she wouldn't have anything.
Is that part of the resilience then?
Yeah, and a quiet resilience as well. I feel that that's how she got through a lot of things. That's how she coped with the way she was treated. And I know that even when I was a young teenager, she was still getting that racism at Neville Edge Hospital. I know she was.
When you look at your life, does it seem like it's in different acts? Because when you describe your upbringing in Jamaica, when you describe the experience of coming here over 60 years ago, does it feel like different acts almost? Because can you see yourself at that time, as that 19, 20-year-old young woman? What would you say to her?
Probably do the same thing. I'd say do the same thing.
I don't think I have any regrets of coming.
There are times, I'm not saying it was all roses. There were good times and bad times. Yeah. We haven't told you all the bad times. But there were good and bad times. But on the whole, generally, it wasn't a bad decision. It was a good decision to come. And I mean, it was for mainly economical reasons. And we haven't done very badly, have we? So, and I found the English people to be, the true English people are very good people. The true English.
I've always felt British. My mannerisms are quite British. I had a strong northern accent before I came to London. I had a strong South Yorkshire accent. Sometimes I actually say to some people, when especially confrontation about race, that I'm more British than you are. I know more about my British history than you do. I should know more about my black history than I should do. A lot of black people of my peer group don't. But I know a lot about British culture, British literature. I see, because my mum was really into the education, and I think that's why I'm like that, because she thought that education was the only way to succeed.
Can you tell us about your great-grandfather? You're going right back.
Yeah.
You have a very distinct heritage, and I think for you, Yvonne, it's really important that you make that distinction.
Yes.
What you just said.
Yeah, so my great-great-grandfather, he was white Scottish, and he ended up in Jamaica, and he'd married my great-great-grandmother, and she was a native Jamaican. So even at school, I felt very neutral. Once I'd found that I was accepted, especially in the black community, because it was almost like I had to explain myself. I sort of had to,
because your heritage is different.
Yeah, but also
to.
it's just and they weren't so sure about me because I didn't have Afro hair. It's the weirdest thing, and it's you get judged. It's just a judgment, and I never liked it. But I just sort of I used to sort of ask them, like, why would you think I'm any different to you? Why would you, and it's.
Do you feel you've had to do that a lot? Explain your heritage to people?
Yeah.
Because actually, speaking like as colleagues,
Yeah.
you've said on
Oh,
several
yeah.
occasions that people have misread you or misinterpreted.
Yeah,
or,
definitely.
Thought, where is she from? Or
Yeah. Or what do you know? It's like, what do you know? What do you know about reggae music? Or what do you know about eating West Indian food? I was just like, I eat it at home. My mum's a really good cook, thank you very much. And I learned how to cook West Indian food, my culture was so important to me. It's all the way through my life. And even me and my brothers, we integrated, of course, because we're British, we're black British, and of course there's that's what we've had to do, and why shouldn't we? But our culture is really important as well, and my mum absolutely instilled that in us.
From what I've got from the DNA is I'm 74% African. So we're talking about Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Mali, and I think a little bit of Cameroon as well. And then the rest of the mix is Scottish, the Netherlands, which I think is kind of where the Ashkenazi side might come from, because we're coming from Deutschland or whatever they call that side of where I'm coming from. So there's a good percentage of other European nations that is in me, which is something that I didn't know. I mean, I remember going to school and I had really brown, big afro, and we'd go to parties and it'd be hot and my afro would still be here and everyone else's would shrink. So I didn't know what that was, because obviously you're young, you don't understand everything about yourself. But then I started to realise that as I got older, there was that mix, and that was what was creating that. And even in my children, like, there's such a mixture in all my children.
Are you proud of your St. Lucian heritage? Do you feel connected?
I feel I do, like when I'm here, when I go there, I do, but I also feel like really, really English. Aside from the fact that people call you English, just as like if they don't know your name, you'll just get called English, because it's very obvious. But yeah, definitely. I think it's nice to say that we're from there, especially as it's so beautiful. Like it'd be nice if I could spend more time there, but I can't. Like adulthood takes over. It's not. You can't just go on holiday all the time. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice. There's like a lot of. It's so like verdant there, like green and lush, like the entire island's like that, and that creeps into everyone's daily lives. Like everyone has like I grew up always surrounded by plants, and not small plants ever either. Like, Mum was so good at growing things that I remember us having like a huge monstera. I just used to love it. It was this cheese plant. I just used to love it because it was called a cheese plant. It looked like the cheese off of Tom and Jerry. And it was huge in the corner of her room. And then she had this huge type of like alocasia, like spade leaf plant, which was just as big, and a massive begonia that always used to be dripping in like these pink flowers that I always used to pick off of. Mum was very tolerant. Always used to pick flowers. If I had a doctor's appointment, pick a flower, take to the doctor, take flowers to my teachers.
Basically, for the tape, Michael came in and he has shared his ancestry. There's a lot of story, which is amazing, and you're going back, way back to the 1850s. But you said something that really struck me, and that is about being a vessel. Can you explain that to us? What is it you're carrying with you as a vessel?
Okay, so what I feel I'm carrying with me through the family is the family history I've always been interested in from a fairly young age. And going to Jamaica one time to my grandfather's funeral and ending up in a place called St. Elizabeth, in a place called Shattuck Hill, not through mistake, but just through my uncle, and actually realising that that's where Jacob Dyer came from. He was born in 1852. This is my great-great-great-grandfather. And it made me think, when I found out, because I spoke to my uncle who's Alfred Dyer, same as his dad, I thought, there's something I've got to do, there's some purpose here. And I feel I'm a vessel for that. Because the generations, like my son Michael is very interested in it, which I'm happy about, because now there's going to be someone else to carry it on, because I think it's very important to know your ancestry and to know where you're coming from. It kind of makes you understand yourself a lot more. My
mum and dad had always spoken about their wedding favourably. We've had that photo in our house for many, many years. And, you know, they spoke about the records they played, and they said that they played this song, Pledging My Love, by Johnny Ace, but we didn't have it. And I happened to be in New York, and I thought I'd go to Greenwich Village and have a dig around for this album. And I went to this really compact record store, and there was this lovely Jewish lady, and I said, I'm looking for this record, you know, Pledging My Love by Johnny Ace. I mean, I didn't know who he was. And she said, that is the most remarkable love song ever created. So I bought the album, and obviously my mum and dad were delighted.
Forever, my darling, my love will be true, always and forever, I'll love just you. Just promise me, darling, your love in return. Make this fire in my soul, dear, forever burn.
When did you start listening to music from the Caribbean?
From before I went to the Caribbean, and it wasn't just reggae. I liked reggae, but I was more of a soul person. More ska.
Can you give us some names, examples?
Prince Buster was the first one that I remember, the 10 Commandments. Such a sexist song now, but at the time, I loved him. Even now, when I play the 10, Prince Buster was for me the song that I remember.
The 10 Commandments of man, given to all man, through the inspiration of I, Prince Buster. 1. Thou shalt have no other man but me.
I liked ska when I was growing up. I liked the Specials, and I loved the Selector because there was a woman fronting that band called Pauline Black, and I loved her. I used to dress like her when I was 17. I used to have the trilby hat and the suits as well. I met her as well.
3-minute hero, I wanna be. 3-minute hero, I wanna be. 3-minute hero, I wanna be.
not that about, I would say I met her about just under 10 years ago. I've met her a couple of times. Very nice woman, but when I was growing up, I thought she was the B's and E's for me. She was like this black woman that I'd never met, come across somebody like that
amazing
before.
look she had.
She had a great look, and she fronted a band where she was the only woman as well. So yeah, I liked soul music, but ska was my number one.
And then where my dad is in Kentucky, the house blew down. It was a timber house. I can show you the pictures after. That's a timber house that blew down. And now I'm actually in the process of seeking to put it in my name, but as a family, because my thing is my thing in St. Elizabeth, but that is for my 4 siblings. There's 3 of us, there's 4 of us. So that would be called basically the Williams estate or whatever it could be, and that would never be sold. It was going to be generational. It's the same thing with my thing. I don't ever want anything sold. I want it to be generational as time goes on. So when I've passed on, they can still keep it going, because I still think the thing what happened with Jamaica, because everybody left, my grandfather was a very wealthy man, but all his children left, and he sold land and whatever, and he still had loads of it left to get them to have a better life in places like the UK, Canada, America. And I do feel like it's turning back around now. It's going back that way, where I feel like with the skills of my son just last week, he's a qualified civil engineer at 22, you know. He done the business. So for me, my children, which I've done, what I've done for them, so that they can have an input in other places, even in Jamaica, but have an input, be able to take that to the next level and continue that wealth, because that's where our wealth is. At the end of the day, you know, that's where our wealth is. These people worked really hard and went for a lot to build what they built. And I went to Jacobs and it's just wilderness now. No one's doing anything with it, because obviously everyone's gone abroad and they think, well, I ain't going back to Jamaica. But now it's changing, because at least in Jamaica, you know, you can grow your own food, you can do all this kind of stuff. The world's changing, you know, the world's changing.
That's a real circle.
Yeah.
That's a circle.
But things go in circles.
You're part of the generation that came to London, came to the UK from the Caribbean, right at the beginning. What do you think are the qualities that have enabled you to stay here and make a life and be the people that you've been? June, you start.
I think it's how we were brought up.
Yeah.
We were brought up to work hard, study hard, you know, and, you know, give back to society some of what you got from society.
And it was riveting.
And it, you know, I presume from school, they were, you know, during school years, they used to really tell us we've got to work hard. And then when we came to this country and we realized, we were always told that we'll have to work harder than the indigenous people. Because, you know, to get where you want to go. Yeah. So, of course, even during nursing, you had to work hard. On the wards, things like this. You experience a lot of racism on the wards sometimes. Like, you would be asked, you're a trained staff and you've got an auxiliary staff, and the patient would look at you and look at the auxiliary staff and ask you for a bed plan. Do you understand that sort of a scenario? So, you know, these are things that we... But because we had this thing in us to strive, you know, to get somewhere.
Put it this way.
You know, I remember it was a Shakespeare verse, the lives that make great men...
Lives of great men
were not attained by sudden heights, but what they while their companions slept were
toiling upwards in the night.
Yeah. And that always stick.
Can we go back and have that together? Yeah. It has to be in unison.
I can't remember all the words. The life of great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were striving ceaseless through the night.
As a grandchild of the Windrush generation, this project has really very close to home for me. My grandfather was in the British Army in Jamaica. He came to Britain to serve in the army. He was proud to contribute. And he was proud to build a life here, even though it wasn't always easy for Caribbean people at that time. His story is a big part of why I understand the strength and resilience of that generation. My mum came over a little later. She was about 16 after the first wave of Windrush arrivals. She actually left a life in Jamaica that she'd loved. She didn't want to leave her grandmother, and she didn't want to leave the life that she had. She had an amazing life in Jamaica, especially growing up, and as a child I know she had a more of a privileged life, but she told us many stories about being really happy there and being at school and her friends, but a lot of her own cousins eventually came over as well, so she could be with them as well. So we all sort of grew up and got to know lots of different cousins and things, and which was lovely. And she studied here at college in London, and she built a life in the borough of Lewisham. She brought her Jamaican values, her culture, her warmth. She was just such a big spirit, and she was always fun, and she loved music, because music was such a big part of growing up in Jamaica as well, and it really shaped the way that I grew up. Jamaican culture has influenced Britain in so many ways: music, food, language, fashion, activism, community spirit. It's woven into everyday life, often without people realising where it comes from. For me, being part of this project is about honouring those stories while our elders are still here to tell them. It's about celebrating their contribution and making sure future generations understand the journey that brought us here. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud to help keep these memories alive.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Are you going to sing it, Rudy?
I'm going to sing with you.
You know it?
Yeah, what are you going to sing?
Carry me out.
It all instead market, not what they would send. Right, let's get down. Instead market.